I couldn't think of a better song that went along with my topic of Into the Mystic. It's not something you generally hear at church probably, but. Hi. Ernest Holmes wrote, "The Spirit within me is God. The living Spirit Almighty is within me now. Spirit is the sustaining principle in my life. I open my mind to its influx. I open my consciousness to its inflowing. I open my heart to its love." The Spirit within you is God. The living Spirit Almighty is within you now. Spirit is the sustaining principle of your life. Today I hope to open your mind and allow your heart and your consciousness to allow the inflowing of true Spirit into your heart and feel its love. Truly within each one of us there is a call, a deep longing, a soul's yearning to connect, to commune with, and to be in the conscious union of the power that is greater than ourselves, which we call God. It's a longing to be in the mystic, home. There is a yearning to live from this higher presence and power, and whether or not we dive in and answer the call will determine our level of contentment, peace, and plenty as we experience our lives. But we do want to dive in, don't we? I want to begin, however, with the recognition that sometimes our world the world of form can grab our attention and become this all-consuming. It can be so real that it seems to leave little, if any, space for anything more than just coping with, dealing with, let alone make that connection to our souls that we long for. To illustrate, I'd like to tell a story about a Hindu tradition, about a yogi whose guru left him under a tree with nothing but a loincloth and a begging bowl. And every day he'd go into town with his loincloth and begging bowl, beg for money. One day, after a long day of being in town and contemplating God, he washed out his loincloth and hung it on the tree to dry. When he awakened the next morning, he noticed his loincloth had been chewed by rats. So he had to go into town with just the begging bowl, begging for money and also a new loincloth. Total embarrassment. But he went right back to contemplating about God. A few days later, after receiving a new loincloth, he went out and washed out the new one, and the rat again ate up his loincloth. What was a yogi to do? I know, I'll get a cat. So, he got a little kitten. The kitten protected the loincloth from the rat, but the kitten was hungry. So he had to go into town and beg not only for money with his new loincloth, but he had to beg for milk for the cat, which again was embarrassing for the yogi. The yogi said, "I know what I'll do. I'll go get a cow." So he went and got a cow to give the cat the milk to protect the loincloth from the rat. And still the yogi went under the tree, this time a little less frequently, because he had to feed the cow that gave the milk to the cat to protect it from the rat. Again, it was embarrassing. So he decided during the rainy season that he'd plant some grass. So he started planting and had a big garden to feed the cow, to give the milk to the cat, to protect the loincloth from the rat. And he knew longer and longer that he was not having as much time to be able to contemplate life under the tree. So he hired some men to farm the ground that he had, to feed the cow, to give the milk to the cat, to protect the loincloth from the rat. Well, that took up his time because he had to supervise the workers in the field. So he married a wife. So he took the wife watched the men in the field grow the grass for the cow, to milk you know what I'm talking about. So then, but the wife didn't want to live under the tree with the yogi, so he built a house. Then he had to build a bigger house because the wife got pregnant. Wife got pregnant in the big house, where the wife was watching the workers. Okay. Again, the yogi made a bunch of money doing this. He was raising cattle, raising the farmland, forgot about sitting under the tree. But one day while he was sitting under the tree in his meditation, a familiar figure walked up. It was his guru, who surveyed the situation. Said, student, is that you? Did I not leave you under this tree 5 years ago to contemplate God with nothing but a begging bowl and a loincloth? The yogi bowed his head and gestured to his vast estate and said, Reverend teacher, I know it seems hard to understand, but truly, this is the only way that I could keep my loincloth. Can you relate to that? It can be easy to be distracted from our relationship with that which is greater than ourselves, with the things of the world calling for our attention, can it? But if we desire to experience true peace, true prosperity, if we desired a deep contentment, satisfaction, and happiness in our life, if we desire to fill the space of longing in our hearts, we must find the connection to Source. Or to phrase it differently, perhaps some of you will, as I used to say, get itchy by this. I don't know about that. We must move into the mystic mindset. Did that statement twitch you a little bit? We must move into the mystic mindset. I'm no mystic, you may think. Yes, I want to feel a longing, but saying I must go the way of the mystic leaves me out. Mystics are saints, exalted one, holy men and women, sages and gurus who sit atop mountainsides meditating 24/7 and knowing the meaning of life. That's not me. But that is a misconception. Listen to the description of what a mystic is from Ernest Holmes. A mystic is not a mysterious person, but is one who has a deep inner sense of life and of his unity with the whole. A mystic is one who intuitively perceives truth and without mental process arrives at spiritual realization. The mystic senses the atmosphere of God. The mystic sense reveals the greater truth and knows all that definitive as the divine being. It is still personal to all who believe in its presence. Isn't that what we're saying when we say the Spirit of God is within me, the living Spirit, Almighty is within me now, the Spirit of the sustaining principle? Rabbi David Cooper, who wrote that whenever he sat down with holy men and women, whether they be Buddhist monks, Native American shamans, Catholic priests, they all shared their mystical insights and experiences. They all said the same things, different words, yes, different focuses on different times, different cultures, different people, but yet it's all the same. And the message, the deep message that each of these teachers spoke about what is really quite simple. It's not complicated. It is that we each have something so profound within us, and that all we must do is awaken to it, become present to it, become alive to it. There's a gentleman, and some of you may know the name, Siddhartha, who's walking the earth doing holy work. People were astounded at him doing this stuff and said, "What are you? Who are you? What are you doing? Are you an angel?" "No, I'm simply one who's awake." And that's what the Buddha stands for, the awakened one. We each have something profound within all of us. And all we must do is awaken to it, to become present to it, become alive to it. It's really that simple. But we try to make it complicated, don't we? We regularly try to riddle out of simplicity. To illustrate this, I want to tell you a story about a different Holmes. You may have heard of him, Sherlock. Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson went on a camping trip one time. Laying there, looking up at the stars, and Dr. Holmes says, "Watson, tell me what you see when you see those stars." And Watson replied, "I see millions of stars." What does that tell you? Astronomically, it tells me that there are millions of galaxies and potentially billions of planets. Theologically, it tells me that God and his universe are infinite. Meteorologically, it tells me that we will have a beautiful day tomorrow. Feeling rather self-satisfied, he'd come up with all these different angles to explain, and so quickly, he turned to Holmes and said, "What does it tell you?" Dr. Holmes says, "It tells me somebody stole our tent." We try to make it so complicated, but it is really that simple. Who do you think you are? You are spirit. You are the activity of God expressing as you. Every experience in life is an opportunity to take these steps that lead toward the fulfillment of your glorious potential. Essentially, going into the mystic recognizes that God is in all, and it is the practice of seeing, sensing, feeling, and experiencing God within and without. It is a practice of letting God guide and direct and inspire. We call this our intuition. Charles Fillmore, one of our founders, talks in the Talks of Truth, says Elijah found that voice of God that was not the wind, not in the earthquake or the fire, these being of the intellect, but in that still small voice. We are all natural mystics when we go out of our heads and into our hearts. But we can be drawn to different levels and deeper levels. The Buddha said, "Let your mind become clear like a still forest pond." I want to wrap this talk up. Use the metaphor of a still forest pond to take us this morning into a mystical place. And if you'd like to go with me, please close your eyes. Relax in your seat. Take a few deep breaths. In our forest pond, there are 5 levels. You're going to be slowly dropping a pebble down into the pond and watch it descend through all 5 levels. Level 1 is the surface. On the surface of the pond, it is not very still. There are all sorts of disturbances. The water is churned up by the wind, pelted by the rain, frozen by the cold temperatures, and thawed by the warm temperatures. Leaves and dirt litter the surface. All the disturbances to the pond are visible at this level. The surface of your mind is also where all the activity, all the disturbances exist. All this chatter about finances, deadlines, health, children, appointments, shopping lists, retirement, vacation choices, the world unrest, last week's election, conflict at work, relationships, last night's dinner. The thoughts are endless. And of course, this is where our ego lives, with all the hurts and upsets and judgments. But just because the surface is being whipped around with mad activity, it doesn't mean that all that activity is going on below the surface. Let your rock drop now slowly to the 2nd level. Level 2. It's just below that surface. The disturbances have very little impact. The storm may still be above, but his presence is not felt in the same way. As you go below the surface of your mind and you leave the egoic chatter behind, here the constant entering and exiting of thoughts is replaced with a different kind of thinking. You have more control of the thinking process, though you're still a long way from the silence of the deep. But here your thinking is more focused. As you sit still, you may find your thoughts are now analyzing those still those silent comments you make as you assess your progress or lack of it, others' progress or lack of it. Even as you proceed with this meditative process, you just go back to your pebble and see it falling through, leaving your analyzing mind behind. Now we're in the third level. The pebble is now well below the surface of your mind. Feel the chatter lessening, as well as the need to analyze everything. Allow your mind to see the flow of how things are all connected and held together. At this level, begin to experience more of your spiritual nature. At this quiet level deep below the surface, accept that people are unique and that you may not understand how or why everyone behaves the way they do, including yourself. But here, there's no need to analyze. It's much more rewarding just to surrender to the flow, to feel the flow of acceptance followed by gratitude. As you surrender to that flow, the pebble drops to level 4. You're now getting to a place where you're actually experiencing the shutting down of dialogue. In this space, thoughts begin to disappear as you sink into pure awareness. Notice the silence of awareness as fewer thoughts swim through. As your mind becomes quieter, you might notice joy beginning to sparkle. As a great mystic once said, joy is the infallible sign of the presence of God. At the 4th level below the surface of your mind, you begin to experience joy. Begin to experience the presence of God. And yet, there's one more level. Level 5. The field of all possibilities. This is the final resting place of our pebble. This place is beyond mere quieting of the mind. Here is the place within, where you empty your mind of all thoughts and experience the stillness. This place is very hard to describe. Here, rather than focusing on any thought, put your inner awareness on the space that exists between the thoughts. It is the field of all possibilities. There are no distractions here, no separation, only consciousness, pure consciousness, merged into one, moments of silence. Be at peace with your soul, then heaven and earth will be at peace with you. Eagerly enter the treasure house that is within you, and so you will see the things that are in heaven, for there is but one single entry to both of them. The ladder that leads to the kingdom is hidden within your soul. Here, you are home. Welcome to the mystic. Namaste all.